So I'm always waiting for one of those news investigation articles that go in and say how the landlord was harmed by his tenants, just as opposed to the landlords always being the problem.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
Hello and welcome to episode 36. Today, I am excited to be talking with Mark Troy. Mark is the owner of Compass Property Management. He's also a real estate investor, and he's the president of the RPOA. So, Mark, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Brian.
We have a lot to talk about today, but I think we should start at the beginning because a lot of people know you as a very successful business owner, but you also have a real estate portfolio.
Correct.
And at one point, you were a beginning investor.
Yep.
Let's talk about that.
Great. Yeah, in the beginning. Well, back in 2000, early 2000s, I bought my first rental property. And, I did the normal thing I think everyone does, read the books, get the tapes, learn how to buy investment properties and why, and how they can provide passive income. But you really don't know how it is until you actually buy one. So my first property that I bought, I thought we just do what the book says. You collect the rent and just keep the cash flow and retire off that and, sooner or later. But no, experienced investors sold me this property. And it was on Fulton Street. And
this was back in 2000?
2000, yep. And next thing I know, I go collect the rent. I knocked on the door, and the lady looked at me like I was crazy. Like, oh, I don't have the rent. I'll have it next month. And I'm like, what? That's not what the book said. So luckily, the RPOA was around. I took a seminar with
the Rental Property Owners Association.
Yep, in Grand Rapids here. And I went to a seminar hosted by Paul Stewart. Some of you might know him. And they said the only thing I remember from that seminar, if you do anything, join the RPOA. And I joined them. And the next day, I needed their assistance to help with evictions, rent collections, forms, just everything that they do. So that membership might have been the difference of me sitting here today or not. So because in the beginning, it was really rough.
So if you had you not had their services, you would have been at the whims of this woman who did not want to pay you rent.
Right. Yeah. And all the other tenants I'd had to learn how to be a landlord at that time. Yeah.
So your very first experience, and was this a single family?
It was a duplex.
A duplex.
Yep.
Very first experience, you go to collect rent.
Yep.
She doesn't want to pay.
Yeah. Right out the gate.
So you evicted her.
Right.
And you're managing this property yourself.
Yes. And actually, it was she was, for some reason back then, weekly rentals were a thing that people did. And I learned from the RPOA, all I had to do was give her a 7-day notice to terminate her tenancy because she had other problems that were going to come. I could quickly see that. So I didn't do the 7-day notice for rent collection. I just did the 7-day notice to terminate her rent. If I would have read the book, it would have told me to do a 30-day notice. But the RPOA helped. I got her out in 7 days. After that, I went to court, and she was gone within 30 days, as opposed to putting up with her for a full 30 days.
Great.
And all of her issues. So.
And then let me adjust this here so it's like right in.
Yep.
Yeah. So then, what happened? Were you able to then market that unit, get a better tenant?
Right. And then started taking the RPOA classes, reading their literature and stuff like that. And things were much easier then. And that was the beginning of my career of investment properties.
Great. And do you still own that duplex?
No, I actually sold it to an investor. Then it's actually vacant dirt right now, looking to be commercial. So I didn't lose any money on it, but it wasn't my best deal ever.
But it was a good learning experience, right?
Yes. Well, I got a wealth of education from it.
Yeah, sometimes, and that's more important sometimes in the beginning, because I know a lot of the initial or early properties that I bought, single families, condos, out of state, I never really made much money off of them, but they were great learning experiences. It was like getting a really good education and breaking even at the same time.
Yeah, if you can learn something and break even, that's a good deal. Unfortunately, I didn't get all those opportunities to break even and learn something. Sometimes losing money is part of learning how to make money.
Right, but you stuck with it.
Right, I didn't give up.
Mm-hmm. What'd you do next? What was the next step?
Well, and then spent several years just buying properties. I remember buying a 4-unit on Calkins. That's right next to one of the McDonald's that they closed down on Wealthy, one of the few in the nation.
Oh, wow. Yes, if they close a McDonald's near you, you're in trouble. But wait, let's set the stage. We're in Grand Rapids because we have listeners all over the world. Okay. So we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah. Back in 2000, there wasn't much going on here.
Right.
And in fact, the neighborhoods a lot of them were in decline. Mm-hmm. It's the opposite now. But you're on Wealthy, Calkins. What area is that?
Wealthy, Barth, Wealthy, and Eastern.
Okay.
In Fuller.
Oh, there used to be McDonald's over there.
Right, yeah.
They closed it down.
Yeah, I think at the time it was one of 3 in the nation that was closed for violence.
Wow.
So I didn't know. I bought the 4-unit there. The numbers worked on the spreadsheet again. And again, there's things you got to learn about areas and not just the numbers. And, and then, I would be sitting there painting at 10 o'clock at night and hearing gunfire and just wondering if this was the right thing to be doing or not. But, and actually the building had a drive-by shooting at it. So, but now it's a beautiful area. Rents are up 50%. And so
tell me about the drive-by shooting. Were you in the house? Were they coming after you?
Yeah. Apparently, I rented to a well-known gang family.
Oh,
it was just a little old lady, the grandma of the gang family, and apparently her grandsons did something, and he was out front, and the car drove by, and they just peppered the building with gunfire.
Wow.
So.
What was the fallout of that? Did your other tenants move out? Did your insurance cover the expense?
Yeah, well, they weren't very good shots. Most of them went in the ground, and one bullet went through the window, and so we just replaced the window. And it was a brick building too, so we didn't find much damage to it, luckily. The police just said that's just how things are around in this area. So again, you really want to do your homework.
And this is Wealthy. Where was this?
On Calkins.
On Calkins. Yeah, and I'm not familiar with Calkins. You say that's
small street, mm-hmm. In between Eastern and Fuller.
Okay.
Yeah, small little street.
Okay, so now it's gentrifying. Mm-hmm. Everything's on the upswing. Mm-hmm. Lesson to be learned: always buy a brick building because it withstands drive-by shootings much better. Huh?
Yeah, and Grand Rapids is a completely different city now.
Yeah,
and it's a lot easier fewer areas, if any, are like that. So,
yeah, very true. I mean, it's I think starting, I don't know, what would you say, about 10 years ago, things really started to hit bottom and started to turn
8,
around.
9, you could see the different things that the city programs were doing were actually working. The Renaissance areas really did help. Mm-hmm. I mean, you just drive down Wealthy Street now; it's a whole different neighborhood. And values have jumped all around there. So
yeah, I mean it's a desirable, walkable mm-hmm. place for people to live.
Right.
Do you still have that 4-unit?
I did not. I do not. I sold it in probably 7 because I was getting the sense that prices were going to fall pretty dramatically. So
really, you were able to kind of read the writing on the wall and get out before the bubble burst.
Yep. Made a few dollars and got out of there because I knew the area was changing for the better, but I didn't know how long. I knew prices were dropping. So I actually bought, made one mistake buying a 4-unit there. I bought the one right next to it. Figured I changed the whole neighborhood. So I doubled down on that. And a young lady came by and was going to, saw the changes happening, was going to remodel it and did well. And so I bought 4 units, one get shot at, I'll buy the next one. So maybe you can help them.
Well, if you control the neighborhood, you control the direction of the neighborhood.
Yep. I did sell that before the market started turning down.
So your strategy at that point seemed to be small residential multifamily, mm-hmm. 2 to 4 units.
Yep.
Why did you go that route as opposed to single family? I mean, what was your deliberate strategy at that point? Well,
I think just from the reading, the education I got, it's the single family and duplexes and or 4 under. They're easier to obtain the loans. They're the residential loans. At that time you can get 10 of them.
And it was a lot easier to get residential loans at that time too.
Than commercial loans. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, just at that time you could do as low as 10% down, even on these buildings, and so it's just easier to obtain them. And again, it's still a new experience, a newer investor. I had a full-time job, as an engineer, and, worked on them nights and weekends, and I didn't really venture into, those larger communities yet, just because that wasn't my education on the investment properties. Mm-hmm. So,
and going, there's so much material, so much educational material now for beginning investors. I mean, podcasts alone, we didn't have those back then.
No.
So where were you, what was the book you were reading? Where were you getting your education?
There's probably dozens of books, and they're not, those writers aren't that popular now. There's just, I'm just trying to think of some of the ones that I did read.
Like Robert Allen?
Yes. Yeah, that was a good one.
Robert Kiyosaki?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then I did buy the Carlton Sheets. His numbers are a little aggressive and a little too simple, to do that. But it was good education. I mean, I bought the stuff and listened to it all, and I probably still pull from that information today. But yeah, it takes a little. At the end of the day, you just got to buy one and get the experience.
Yeah, well, you certainly did that. How many properties would you say you bought then, leading up into 2007?
I think I brought on a business partner at the time. We were probably up to over 40 units.
Oh, so you were pretty deep into it then.
Yeah, I was. That's a good way of putting it, deep into it, because as you know, 2008 was coming and things were changing. So let's talk about that, because you're buying starting in 2000 up through 2007. You acquire about 40 units. Now, granted, you're buying in West Michigan, which at the time did not have the bubble prices, right?
But you are buying. You're still buying at kind of the top of the market.
Yep, very much so.
How did that portfolio turn out for you?
Well, as you see right now, I don't have any hair. Again, more of an education. I think I lost several hundreds, thousands of dollars just buying at the wrong time and not having enough experience to know when it would end and how to work all that out. So did a lot of hard work, nights and weekends. At that time in 2007, I stopped and started Compass Property Management. So that was my only income, and so I was in it on both ends, managing for people that were losing money and trying to keep mine going too.
The Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast is brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing services and benefits to Michigan investors for over 48 years. The RPOA benefits and services include investor networking, property management and investment forums, tenant screening services, free limited legal advice, education, national and local discounts, and lobbying for the industry. Receive a 50% discount on your first-time membership with the RPOA by calling 616-454-3385 Monday through Friday and mention this podcast. Once again, that's 616-454-3385. The RPOA, where over 1,300 Michigan landlords and real estate investors go for success.
So you had these units. What was it that got you into trouble? Was it that the renters were buying houses and the rents were going down, or what happened?
I knew there were bad times coming when I saw when I was doing an eviction on a tenant, and he really wasn't that excited about it because he was moving the stuff into a moving truck to go move into a house he just purchased.
Wow! So you're evicting this guy, but yet he qualified
was able
for
to buy
a
house. Yep. And on my second one that I did like that, because I just stopped paying rent, and they were never good payers to begin with. I knew the economy, something was happening. Mm-hmm. So if that happens again, though, I'll have a whole bunch of cash ready to go to buy up in a couple of years. Mm-hmm. So it was really I had several single family homes, duplexes, and at the top, so I was able to sell those and then leverage it into larger buildings, which, it was a multiplier for the mistakes that were about ready to come. So I call them mistakes, but who would have known that the rents were going for $625 would have dropped to $495 or $450 within 12 months.
Wow! So the rents drop that much, huh?
Significantly.
Did you have the same problems on your larger buildings?
Yes.
With more units?
Yep. It was magnified. Mm-hmm. So you just got to be very, very careful and diligent about how you're buying properties, and I mean, no spreadsheet's going to have a drop like that on there. So hopefully that's a one-time in history event where rents drop that much.
Yeah, it's not something you really forecast, is that your rents are going to drop by 20% or whatever they drop by.
Yep.
What? Well, you had a job as an engineer, and you built a portfolio of 40 units. At some point, you said, "You know what? I'm going to quit my job, switch over to full-time real estate."
Right.
What was that like?
Well, for some reason, people were asking me to manage their properties. Can you help me here and do this and do that, and I just thought, wow, you don't have to promote a business to get business. So I'm not a sales guy. I said, this might be for me, and it's hard to have 40 properties in a full-time job. And
you're managing those properties as well.
Self, yep. So, quit and started a company. And
this was in 2007?
Yeah, yep. Oh, I quit a couple of years before that to work with another management company, and we just split our ways, and the Compass was, began 10 years ago.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 10 years ago, Compass began, and it was to manage your properties and others as well. And that was right around the time the bubble burst.
Right.
And the market dropped. So that's a pretty huge confluence of events there. What was that like?
Well, when you're living in it, you really don't notice it. You're managing, for people that are over leveraged on a bunch of properties, and nothing's really adding up, and they're using their savings to keep the mortgage current and stuff like that. So it was some tough times. I mean, just trying to get someone to fill the vacancies and hope they can make it 3 or 4 months. Was what we were looking at, just to take the edge off of the cash flow issues. But I started the business in my basement on a card table and just kept going at it. And just kept working on it. And what I was noticing, as other people were struggling, other people were coming into the business with cash and picking up things 50 cents on the dollar. And so that was a good experience to see, but it's kind of sad. One person was losing and another person was winning. So we quickly tried to get with the people that were bringing in cash into the market and helping them or pointing them in the right direction, where to buy and what to buy and how and why. And today we're at we do more than just manage properties. We do real estate sales, remodeling, maintenance, and we have 25 awesome employees that work there every day. And things are going well.
Yeah, it's quite a business you've built. You have 25 employees. You're one of the largest management companies in Grand Rapids. So Compass does not just manage properties.
Right.
You also have a rehab division.
Right. So in 2009, I brought on a business partner, John Brophy, to help with the maintenance side of that, because that's a whole other company. I mean, collecting rent's one thing, but actually maintaining them is a big job to bring on employees and do that. And we wanted to do that so we can control the quality. I was tired of being at the mercy of the vendors saying, well, your unit will be ready in next month. I want it this week, So if I had employees, you could tell them when to do that. So we maintain the properties, we manage them, collect the rents, do the leasing. But we also have a full real estate service. Compass Real Estate Services is the number one in West Michigan in multifamily sales. And we started that probably 3 years ago. And that's doing really well.
Yeah, and you have, who's on your team? Because I know I've talked to Tom Coates here.
Yeah, Tom and Allison.
Mm-hmm. Allison, who I have yet to interview, but will be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a couple other agents that do some residential sales and also investment properties. So yeah, correct, because we're basing that off office statistics. So an office of, say, 5 or 6 agents versus other offices that have 50 agents in it. We're still, we're turning the most volume in dollars in West Michigan for multifamily sales.
That's great. And I'm sure you have a lot of investors who come to you looking for properties.
Yes. Yep. We get calls weekly from out-of-state investors looking for different opportunities and what we have. So quickly building a list.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment. I mean, you're getting calls from people out of the state. I mean, 5 years ago, people weren't even thinking about Grand Rapids.
Right, and they should have been.
And that's when they should have been calling, huh?
Right.
That's when you and I were buying.
Right.
But so what are those calls like? Tell me how those calls usually go. I mean, where are these people calling from? What are they looking for? How much money are they looking to place?
Anywhere from multi-million-dollar properties to I like to start with a duplex. So it's everything between it, and it's just the attention that Grand Rapids is getting throughout the country or world, where this is just a cool place to live, and people are seeing that, and they're in California they'll see their returns being negative 4%, and they're just eating off the appreciation, which is hard to do. In New York City, it's, zero returns and hoping for appreciation. So in Grand Rapids, when, if you say you can get an 8 to 10% return for them and with appreciation, and people are attracted to that. Some people come here and look for investment properties to buy, and they actually buy their own home here and move to Grand Rapids. Wow,
so they like it that much,
huh? Yep. Yeah, something about being Beer City. Everyone's just happy.
Why wouldn't they be?
Right.
Where are a lot of these calls coming from? Are you getting a lot of California investors calling? Or
there are several from California. I just don't know if that's because it's a bigger state, or that's just there's just more money there, and their state doesn't produce these kind of returns.
Yeah. Well, yeah, compared to California prices, Grand Rapids, I'm sure, seems like a bargain.
Right.
So where do you focus your time now? Because you have so many things going on with the portfolio, the 25 employees, and a
Yep.
very successful business.
Yep.
What are you focusing on?
I am completely focused on the real estate sales. So helping clients transition into maybe multifamilies into several high-end duplexes, or working with larger investors that want to buy multifamilies, large multifamily communities in the Grand Rapids area. So that's what I do primarily. And the other thing that we're looking to do is to partner with them, because if you're an out-of-state investor, it's awesome to bring on the property manager as part of the partner in the property. That way you know as an investor that their interest is your interest. So my full-time job is to look for the next deal and then find the buyer for that, and see how we can put it together.
Great. Yeah, it also helps in securing a loan to have a management company that's respected and
it seems to
has a track record like yours.
Right. Yeah, but sometimes I get humbled when I run into an investor that owns more than we manage. We're managing nearly 1,000 units in the area. Just how big that world is out there. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. As big as you get, there's always someone else out there who has more.
I want to go back a little bit with that transitioning. As some of my clients are getting older and looking to retire, they don't like sometimes the drama of the standard 2-bedroom apartment can give you in a Class C property. And I have been moving them into larger duplexes, like the $250,000 value size. Lower returns on paper, but they're steadier. So something for people to think about. Everyone looks at that duplex and says, wow, over $200,000 for a duplex. There's no way that works, but it does. It works well.
And it works that way just because you're going to have longer term tenants, tenants who pay on rent on time.
Right. It's more like a home.
Yeah, I had this conversation with someone who was looking to house hack, buy a duplex where they would live in one side and rent out the other side. But their price point was in that, I don't know, 125 to 150,000 range, or maybe even lower than that.
Those are fine too.
And my advice to them was, go if you can afford it and you can get a loan for it, go more expensive. Go for the $250,000 duplex, just because of that. Because you want to live, if you're going to live in one side, you want the tenant on the other side to be someone who's paying the higher rent and is just they're just gonna be a better tenant,
Right.
and it's gonna make your life a lot better than if you're only getting $600, $700, $800.
Right.
That's a totally different type of tenant, and you're gonna have a lot more management intensive things to do with that type of tenant.
Yeah, and that's something that a spreadsheet can't teach you. That's only what experience shows you.
Well, that's an excellent point. I mean, have you seen that proved out time and time again?
Yep, over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
give me an example of the difference in those types of properties. If you buy one at a lower price, what kind of problems are you going to have?
more tenant issues, higher turnover, sometimes higher expenses because the apartments aren't left in good shape. So as you move
more
up,
damage,
right? More damage. But there is more profit there too if you can manage it well and handle the expenses to a budget on the property. But if you're just going to do this on your own, I would stick with higher end properties where the rents are up in north of $1,000 a month, and those will give you less phone calls at 3 a.m., less turnover. And if they do leave, the property is probably going to be the way they found it, because they typically have better credit, or they're more collectible, with a higher paying job. So it's things to look into.
Yeah, good point. And I think one of the points that's in your advice there is, if you're managing it yourself,
yes,
go for the better property with the higher rents. Mm-hmm. Now I have properties that get the lower rents, the C-class properties, but I have professional third-party management who handles it for me.
Yep, and they're larger too, so they're more predictable.
Yeah, so I have that economy of scale.
The history is there, and the future projections can be there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And then talking about professional management, and that's not for every owner, every investor. As you can imagine, we go through, see different investors and things like that, and some just can't let go of the property, and they want to know to the penny, and why do you do it this way, and they try to change the systems and processes of the management company. And you probably should just manage your properties on your own at that time, because it's just going to be fighting with everything, and just be aware of that. Because when I started out, I thought I was just going to have a management company do it, and at that time they weren't around. You had to have like 100 units to even think about it. And I'm glad I did manage my own properties in the beginning. That way, I got to learn some of the pains and upsides to owning investment properties.
Yeah. And since this podcast is a rental property owner and real estate investor podcast, we certainly have a lot of listeners who are owners and manage themselves and wouldn't trust anyone else to manage. When would you advise someone to hire a third-party management company?
It's usually, with the right mindset that they can let it go, that ththings aren't going to be perfect how they want it, because 10 units seems to be a good number. When you have more than 10 units, in a full-time job, day job, you should definitely look at management. But another thing that we've kind of bended our services to help the landlord that doesn't really want management, because they want to be able to control, how the toilet's fixed or what, faucets being used and things like that. We provide a leasing service now, because leasing is the hardest part. If you get a good tenant, everything is easy. And the way that Compass does their application process and showings, and when we do a background check on someone, we're checking the whole country, and it's very in depth. And a single owner that may have 5 units that does 2 or 3 vacancies a year couldn't afford that system that we have. So Compass would be happy to do the leasing for you.
So you have an a la carte leasing service that an owner who manages their own property could just come to you and say, fill my vacancy, and I'll do the rest.
We're good at it. We're fast. We have a waiting list. We know a good tenant from a bad tenant based on our background checks. And it'll make your life a lot easier. So it'll keep you from that professional tenant that knows how to work the system.
What are some mistakes that you see owners who manage their own properties making?
They don't remember that it's the resident's home. They feel that, they can go in there anytime they want and make the tenant feel uncomfortable, and they just don't give them their space. They don't see them as a client of theirs or the person that's paying for their asset. They just see them as, they don't treat their residents well. And you got to treat them with love to have them stay and continue paying rent. Now, if they don't pay rent, you want to be fair with them, but you want to be, you want to aggressively move along the eviction process so they can get their priorities in place. And that's another thing, where they'll make deals with tenants. In this market, you don't have to do that anymore. Pay your rent or you have to move out. And we used to do that, and I found that was just the biggest mistake ever, because you don't, do they make their car payment or do they make their rent payment? And you want to be first in line there, so you want to be very aggressive on moving the process along so they know what their priorities are. They don't, other things that I see owners do, they don't fix things that are broken. That's one of the top reasons still why residents move out. Disrepair, if the window's leaking, fix it, replace the window if needed. If hot water's not there, make sure that's done right away. Don't wait till next week to fix the hot water heater. Some of the things that we hear out there. When Compass does a work order, it's not to go fix the toilet. It's to get a lease renewal. That's how we see that work order to be. That's the time that the resident's watching us, making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do and if we care. So we get out there quickly and take care of their issues, so they stay.
Yeah. Do you also see a lot of owners who manage their own properties not getting the maximum rent that they could get?
Yes, and I'm looking for large buildings that have that. where they're happy with the rent they got, but I know there's a 10 or 15% increase that can be done there, which, as you know, just adds a lot of value to the property. Yes, even I get caught sometimes, because our leasing does it every day, and I'm kind of out of the picture there, how high some of the rents are. And I say that, that's way too high. It's not going to happen. Well, so it was already rented, and we had 4 applications. So you need to really understand the market rents out there. They're hard to keep up.
And they've shifted pretty dramatically in the past 3 to 4 years.
Yep. If you're getting what you have got 2 years ago today, you're way behind the curve. And now the trick is, how do you get that back up to market rent? Because say I've seen some of them as much as like $300 a month off. Wow. I mean, the person that's paying $600 isn't going to pay $900 that next on the next rental increase. So that's a difficult decision to make. The condition of the property, how much is it going to take to get to that $900 rental amount, and does it make sense or not? So so you got to know when to push the tenant and when to just not renew their lease, because they can't afford that higher rent and look for a new tenant.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to weigh that with, well, if that tenant moves out, to really get that higher rent, you're going to have to put some money into the unit. So you have to kind of balance that out too. Am I ready to put that money in and lose this tenant?
Ready. So maybe it takes you a year to get ready for that. So, and put the money in the unit when it's vacant. I mean, the rents are high, but they require the unit to look great. So if it needs new windows, get new windows. I mean, I know that's a large expense, but if there's pieces broken and things like that, let's put in new vinyl windows, new flooring, get the colors updated. It's time to freshen up the properties, because the rents are there. Mm-hmm. We just walked through a property, a nice duplex with an investor. He paid $80 for it, and now it's probably worth $150 3 years later. But the tenant just moved out 3 years, lived there, and we're going to put anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 into the property. We're talking new furnace, windows, things like that, carpet, paint, fixtures and whatnot. But we did the rent jump that's going to occur. It's a 30% return.
Wow.
So this is the time to do that.
So on that $15,000 that he's going to put into the property, it's a 30% return, just based on the increase in rent that he's going to get.
Right. And plus, if you wanted to sell it, the value is there too. I mean, we we told them to put in what an investor's going to look at, or at least what I'm going to look at if I'm bringing an investor through there, what's going to make the property sell.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you is that a service you offer to all your clients? Is give them that kind of advice as to, well, here's what you can do to improve your property, get higher rents, and here's what it's going to do to the value of your property.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, you got to get those rents up to keep the value of the property there. Mm-hmm. I mean, some investors will make the jump saying I can get this, but you're going to take a discount on your price if you're looking to sell.
Yeah, if you don't do those things.
Right. Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the goals that you think property owners and whether they manage their own property or hire third-party management. What kind of goals should investors and property owners have in mind?
That is a great question there. First of all, have a goal. I mean, I don't know if you're getting into this just to have headaches, or I'm sure that's not your goal. Or is it to provide a passive income in the future for your family so then you can do what you want to do later on in life? That's a pretty typical goal. But write things down. You're where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years with these investment properties or in your life and things like that. That's really helped me to make sure that I have a clear vision and purpose of why I'm doing this. Why do I get up in the morning to do this type of work? And why do I look at investment properties to help obtain those goals and visions that I have?
And what are some of those goals for you as a business owner?
Right. Well, we want to continue to grow our business. If you're not growing, you'll die. So you want to keep growth there. We always want to be able to provide a great job for our employees. We want them to look forward to going to work and servicing our clients. So a happy employee will give you happy clients. And for bigger goals in my life, why do I get up in the morning and do all these things? I want to attain a large net worth, and then work on giving that away. Working on so as I am getting up in the morning and figuring out, it's going to be a hard day. Why am I doing this? You can't really do it for yourself because you're just going to go back to sleep and just say, we'll just work on that another day. I think about, I'm very passionate about a organization I'm part of called Zoe Waters, where it provides fresh or clean water to unreached areas where otherwise people in this world don't have it, say Africa or Nepal. And that gets me going because I want to make sure that I have the funds to help, promote or do those projects. And, that's what will get you out of bed. So have a bigger purpose than just say myself and make money. The bigger that purpose can be, the more driven you'll be.
So Zoe Waters, is that so? Some of the income that you're creating through Compass is going toward supporting this.
Yep.
This.
Yeah, I just got back from a 2-week mission trip in Nepal. That's where we were going up in the mountains there and providing solar-powered Bibles and water filters, and they just don't have fresh water, so they're drinking water with bacteria in it. They have a lot of water, but it's just not clean. So we just had a company-wide quarterly meeting, and I went through the pictures of that, and I explained to the employees that their work at Compass made profits, which provided me the flexibility and funds to go and do this mission trip. So
in return, your employees can see that they're also helping as well.
Not just locally.
Is there a website that you want to say for that? Zoe Waters?
ZoeWaters.org.
How would you spell that?
ZoeWaters.org.
.org.
And it's part of the World Mission here also. Mm-hmm. You can also get to the Zoe Waters website from that. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a great cause.
It is, yeah.
So that's one of your goals is to build wealth that you can then give away.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. And also you always hear that the more people you help, the easier it is to obtain your goals. So my goal is to help investors meet their goals. So the more investors I can meet and help meet those goals will in return help me meet mine. So I'm looking for new investors or experienced investors that want to come to the Grand Rapids area and buy investment properties. So again, it's just it's not so I can obtain more money to buy more stuff and toys. It's so we can obtain more money to give away. So when you want to get up at 4 a.m. to get something done, think of that and not,
Not yourself, because then you'll say, you know what, I really don't need to get up at 4. I'll wait till 7.
Yeah.
One of the other ways you're helping out too and giving back is through the RPOA.
Right.
You are the president of the RPOA.
Right.
Can you talk about that? Your role there and your responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, it's my turn to be the president. If you're there long enough, you're on the board. You put in your time. Again, we started out this conversation saying how the RPOA basically helped me through the beginning of this business and has kept me in the business, and so I want to give back to that. So, anyone listening to this, wherever you're at in the country or the world, I ask that you support your local rental owners property association of some sort, whatever you have, wherever you're at. Because all the stuff that the RPOA, local RPOA does here, most of its members don't even see, but they experience it. They get it. How we work with the water companies and change the way billing's done, or how we have the mayors or political officials' ears and saying, hey, don't forget about the landlords, and we're providing housing for people. And if you make it too hard for us to provide housing for people, we're going to leave, and then the people won't have places to live. So we're reminding them that this is a partnership.
And that's important, too, because the inclination of government is to be more on the side of the renters and the people who they feel they need to protect. But at the same time, if they pass rules or regulations that are too onerous for landlords, well, the unintended consequences are they're driving up the rents and making it more expensive.
Yeah. So I'm always waiting for one of those news investigation articles that go in and say how the landlord was harmed by his tenants, just as opposed to the landlords always being the problem.
Yeah, it's never about the tenant being the problem, is it?
Well, some of the lies or how they cheat or, just some of the things they cause that we have to live with, no one cares about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they always think that we're just out to get rich.
Yeah, but most landlords and property owners are mom and pop type people who are just trying to make some money.
Right.
Trying to create a little bit of wealth for themselves.
Right. And providing a very important service out there.
Yeah. So the RPOA kind of paves the way. They anytime you see one of those investigative reports, usually they go to someone at the RPOA to get a soundbite.
Right.
Because the RPOA is the Rental Property Owners Association. They're kind of the local resource for knowledge and advocating on the landlord's behalf.
Right. We encourage our current clients that don't really need the RPOA because they don't need the forms, they don't need the leasing help, they don't need the eviction help, to still be members, because those numbers, those dollars are working for their investments. It's even if you own one unit or 100 units, you should be a member of the RPOA.
Yeah, and even at the state level, there's always state bills that are floating around that it could be very detrimental to landlords and property owners. And the RPOA is one of the few organizations who are fighting those types of bills.
Yeah. We're a big part of the RPOA Michigan, RPOAM. They meet monthly when legislation's in session and talk about bills that are coming up or bills that we want passed. And I can't tell you the countless number of bills that have been squashed or diverted or changed based on that organization's influence.
This is kind of an organic plug for the RPOA, but I think that this is the perfect place for me to say that for property owners and investors in the West Michigan area, we are running a special right now for the RPOA. If you're a first-time member, if you call and mention this podcast, you will get 50% off your first-time membership expense. So I think that's a pretty good deal.
So join today.
So Mark, let's talk about mistakes. What are some mistakes that you see investors making? And feel free to share any mistakes you've made yourself.
Well, that would take too long. But first of all, embrace a mistake. Don't Don't go on a downward spin about it and say that, I made a mistake and it's never going to get better. Making mistakes is the only way you go forward and learn. And if you're not making mistakes, you're not really out there doing anything. But some of the obvious ones that I see investors doing, they come into a project, whether it's a $100,000 property or a $2 million property. Sometimes they miss the initial capital need. If you look at it and you see that it needs a roof, in the next couple of years, plan on putting the roof on when you buy it, and you need to have the cash to do that.
Make sure you have that money built in somewhere.
You're not going to get it from cash flow because there is none. Mm-hmm. That first year is the roughest time to own the property because you got to tune it in. You're going to find the little mistakes, the little things that have been covering up or just ignored, that you can't get on inspections. Like I bought that first duplex, bought it, thought the tenant was going to pay rent. Never seen a dime of rent from her. So those are things that you have to plan for.
And instead of collecting that rent, you ended up spending probably hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on evicting her.
Right. And the mortgage payment will still due. So have cash reserves. And how much? As a new investor, the more the better. I'd have at least 6 months of mortgage payments in the bank. That comes from a Dave Ramsey formula for owning your home. 6 months will cover a lot of mistakes, and not have you struggle. And don't think that you're, something's, kind of worn out when you buy a property that it's just going to miraculously just keep working while you own it and you're going to get lucky. Have a budget for the capital repairs right from the beginning.
Yeah. And identify the big ones that you know are going to come up in the first couple of years.
Roof, HVAC.
Yeah, I always have a philosophy when I acquire a property that I need to go in strong. I don't want to buy something and just let it limp along. No, when I buy it, I want to go in strong and have the cash ready to deploy, as soon as possible to fix it up, because that's the only way you're going to achieve the momentum you need. Right. To really capitalize on whatever upside value there is in a property. Mm-hmm. Now, having said that, when we talk about mistakes, as much, quite often, and I would say more often than not, even though I'm being very conservative in my assumptions and building in a budget that I think is more than appropriate, more often than not, I'm still short. Mm-hmm. And you have to scramble, and at least in the first year or two. And then once you get everything under control, it tends to go a lot better. So you can be as conservative as you want and budget as high as you want, but things always happen. Mm-hmm. Unanticipated, unexpected things always happen. So just be aware of that. Don't be rosy in your assumptions, and make sure you have those cash reserves because you're going to need them.
And they're going to happen in that first year. And there isn't a science. No one has a crystal ball for any of this stuff. And sometimes, if you buy 10 properties, at law of averages, 2 of them aren't going to perform like you thought they were. Same reverse, 2 are going to outperform what you thought they were. Just the 80-20 rule there. Now, on the reverse side of that, the other mistake I see, and I think this is a worse mistake than being, too aggressive, is being over conservative. Some people will never buy their first property because they pad those numbers too much. Well, this property is fair, but I'm going to need new everything. And then they never pull the trigger and buy that first property and let a good deal go by. So don't be too conservative on some of those numbers too.
That's a good point. And I know during the 2008, 2011 period, there were a lot of properties I looked at where I was too conservative. Mm-hmm. And looking back, boy, I wish I'd bought those properties.
Right. And I probably held back too long as we come out of this, as prices are rising, because I've been too conservative on some things. I need to get a little bit more aggressive and keep things moving. And back to, if you buy a turnkey property, you probably pay too much. You really want to get something that needs work of something. You need to be able to see a problem and solve the problem after you purchase it. And then that's where you need those funds to solve those problems that the property is having that's not getting the maximum value.
Yeah. And going back to embracing your mistakes, if you do this long enough, you will realize once you buy a property, you know what, I didn't budget enough for what needs to be done. And you need to acknowledge that. You can't just stick your head in the sand and let it limp along, because it'll go downhill pretty quickly.
Right.
You need to embrace the mistake. Say, you know what, we have a problem. Let's put a number on that problem and figure out where we're going to get that money from and fix it, because that's what's going to really turn your property around.
Yep. Even with my 16 years of experience seeing the good, bad, and ugly, last month I made a pretty sizable mistake.
Did you?
Yeah. And luckily I got a big enough shovel to dig out of that hole. Yeah. And I'll never make that mistake again. I've learned through it. We changed our processes, our systems. We won't make some assumptions that we made, and make sure there's more communication and checklists involved, and move on. So that mistake, even though it's expensive and painful now, might save me hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but you embraced it, you acknowledged it, and you dealt with it.
Yeah, you want to own it.
Yeah, you want to own it, and you want to, and really a lot of times it's putting a number on it.
Right.
Putting a dollar figure on it. What is it going to cost to fix this problem? And maybe we don't have that money, but where can we get that money? Even if we have to borrow it, and pay one of our investors 6-7% to borrow it for a period of time. That's how I always fix it. I borrow it. I take out a personal loan from someone who wants a 6 or 7% return on their money.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
But identify the mistake and attack it.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. And what other, as we wrap it up here, what advice do you have for investors who are looking to get their feet wet, haven't bought anything yet, but are looking to get into the market?
Find a great agent that owns investment properties that you're looking for. So if you're looking for a 100-unit building, find an agent that owns a 100-unit building. If you're looking for a couple duplexes, single-family homes, find agents that own those already, and then work with them. I mean, and be ready to purchase too when you start working with that agent. Have the funds, have the financing figured out, and be ready to go. So, I could have saved a lot of time. Working with the agent that owned investment properties as opposed to one that sold a bunch of residential homes, and that would have been helpful. And I wouldn't have had the education I have now that is helping other people. But hook up with a good real estate agent.
So it starts with the agent. What about owners who own property? They manage their own property, and maybe feel like they're not capitalizing on the market right now. What advice would you have for them?
Again, find a management company that manages those types of properties, or a real estate agent that does, or call the RPOA and see if you can get a reference from someone that might be able to help you, and have that person out there. A lot of people will give you this advice that you need to know about. Maybe you're not doing anything wrong, and that would be helpful to know that. But 9 times out of 10, if I review a property for another party, I can find improvements or things that can change that will dramatically increase the value of that property.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10. I mean,
9 times, just another set of eyes.
Yeah.
And I could probably have someone look at my stuff and do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter how good you are or how long you've been doing it.
Maybe after this, you and I can go for a ride and look at some properties that we own. I'll give you some numbers and you can help me out.
Yeah, sounds good. Let's do that. Well, Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Thanks for having me.
We certainly learned quite a bit from you, and it was a pleasure talking.
Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
So before we go, I want to take a moment and talk about the Rental Property Owners Association. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that a lot of the guests that I've had on this show are members. And as a member myself, I can tell you that the RPOA provides a lot of value, not just to me, but to all Michigan rental property owners and real estate investors. And right now, they are offering a 50% discount on first-time memberships by calling this number, 616-454-3385. And you can call that number Monday through Friday. And if you mention this podcast, you'll get a 50% discount on a first-time membership. And once again, that number is 616-454-3385.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.